Yeah, and if you kind of look into social, I mean, there's, obviously a lot to do about social when it kind of became up and running in, 2013, 14. It was still the channel where, people had high expectations, for the betterment of society. And I think, after the last couple of years, we've seen the dark side of it as well. So what is kind of your own usage in social media?
Well, I think like from a business perspective, we use, of course, I think the classic social media channels that you see a lot of other players in our space are using. And for us, definitely Instagram is still an important one.
Mm-hmm.
It's evolved over the last year to become a place which is less of a just a place for us to deliver branded communications, but actually to have conversations and interaction with our community.
Mm-hmm.
So we are doing things more now like answering questions about eye health, about giving people tips of how to stay balanced and healthy when they're using the screens all day.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I'm quite happy to see that shift
Mm-hmm.
where it's becoming a conversational tool. The other one for me, which is quite interesting, I don't know if it's really, it doesn't, I guess it's kind of a social media channel, but it's also a bit of a commercial platform is Depop. I don't know if you're familiar with Depop.
No, what's that?
Um, it's an app it's been out for a couple of years now that started in the UK, which is it's actually a consumer focused resale app. So it's a place where you can go in and when you're finished wearing clothing, you can basically create a nice little profile and sell your used clothing to other people.
Ah,
And I quite like that because there's real beautiful creation happening on that
yeah.
platform by individuals, not by brands, where they're almost kind of building their own little shop, which is
Oh,
quite fun. And also, in the world where we have so many things, it's quite nice to see a place where we are giving products a second life.
yes, for
Uh,
sure. Yeah.
so that one's quite nice.
Nice. Oh, that's a great
Yeah,
tip. Um,
check
so
it out.
let's talk a little bit about Ace and Tate. And I think you just answered the question secretly, but I was kind of wondering who's Ace and who's Tate. But
Yes, indeed. So it's acetate,
yes.
um, which is the material for which a good portion of our products are made from.
Mm-hmm.
It's a classic eyewear material made from originally it's a polymer that's developed from plants,
Mm-hmm.
and the reason why it's so well used in the eyewear industry is because it has both flexibility, which
Mm-hmm.
is really important because you have to shape eyewear to your face,
Mm-hmm.
but also the way that it's built, you can actually create a lot of different interesting colors and dynamics. And over the years, that has really progressed, and we're at the place now where we're also able to do a lot more things sustainably with it, which is quite nice.
Yeah. Okay.
So we're developing now and working with what we call bioacetate,
Mm-hmm.
which is acetate that doesn't really contain any sort of individual or additional plastic polymers inside of it, so
Mm-hmm.
that it can actually be composted over time.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
So how would you explain the success of Ace and Tate? I mean, maybe you can take us quickly through the journey of how the company started.
Yeah, sure. I mean, it's interesting for me as well to talk about this because I still consider myself fairly new to the game. So
Mm-hmm.
I have to give a lot of credit to all the individuals that have been part of Ace and Tate to bring us to this point in this journey. And of course, to
Mm-hmm.
the founder of Ace and Tate, Mark DeLong, was a brilliant guy who, of course, had the idea in the very beginning.
Mm-hmm.
Um, let's say, first of all, if we take a step back and we look at the eyewear industry holistically, and we were speaking about this a little bit before,
Mm-hmm.
it's a very old school industry, and in many ways for good reason. So on the one side, eyewear indeed is a fashion item, but on the other side, it's also a medical device.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe you have the same thing, but I certainly cannot see without my eyewear, and it is the case for a lot of people. So it's also
Mm-hmm.
regulated medically. But what you saw over time um, is that you had a lot of big players really dominating the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say dominating the industry, I mean dominating the value chain. So really controlling materials, controlling supply and production of eyewear, and then controlling the sell-through of that. And
Mm-hmm.
that results for the customer in many places in transparency, why you're paying
Mm-hmm.
this price for a product. This, I think, was a little bit of the idea that kind of sparked our founder, Mark, to start Ace and Tate
Mm-hmm.
several years ago. And essentially what we try to do is take the intransparency out of the eyewear process,
Mm-hmm.
right? So it's about coming in and saying, listen, like if we are not adding all these additional bells and whistles to it, if we're not having to sell our product through a third party, we can offer just as good of quality as any of the other high-end eyewear brands because it's for the most part coming through this, very similar or same supply chain, but at a better price.
Yeah.
And I think what's quite interesting about this is that in that process, especially as we've evolved from being online and now also much more omni-channel and also in store as well, is we can really control the customer experience. We can invest a lot of time there to make sure that the customers actually feel cared for and are felt and are known when they come into the shops.
Yeah.
So that business model is quite interesting, but I think what's helped Ace and Tate stand out even from the competitor set, because that as a model isn't necessarily groundbreaking or alone to Ace and Tate, is a little bit of, let's call it like the brand aesthetic. We call ourselves the eyewear brand for Gen Y and Gen Z. And it's our mission to become, hopefully, one day the number one eyewear brand for Gen Y and Gen Z if we keep working hard. And that means filling the experience with the aesthetic that we know that this customer would like.
Yeah.
There's a creative energy in the brand, which I think has really helped it to fuel over time. And so we're always in this flux of inserting and finding ways to give this kind of surprising brand aesthetic, but also make sure that we really understand the customer experience and we're really able to give the customer the best experience that they can get from any optician.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks for taking us through this journey of indeed starting as an online first brand and now having, I think, about 70 stores.
That's
so
right.
what was the key, maybe one insight of, moving first online and then into clicks and bricks? Because it's definitely a different operating model with more fixed cost. I guess right now having all these stores is not going to be great on your balance sheet. So how are you kind of navigating that space?
Yeah, well, it is a product you put on your face, and it's a product you wear every day. So for many customers, you want to try it on. This is understandable. But again, I think the other important thing to remember is it is a medical device. So effectively, you need to get your eyes tested to be able to wear glasses. And you really, 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 really should get your eyes tested about usually around every 18 months, 2 years or so, you should have your eyes tested. So in a way, it became a very natural growth opportunity for us to move from really being a pure play online organization where the customer has to do this somewhere else. So we don't have any information. We can't control that experience. We know what's happening. And then they have to try glasses online or order at home. But they don't necessarily have the ability to try the whole collection or to get feedback from people or to talk to an optician. And this is when we started to make the shift offline. But for me, what's been really interesting, and I think if I look at, say, my career in marketing, what I've really enjoyed about working at Ace and Tate is that the online mentality is applied to retail, whereas in other places, what I've observed working with other organizations or talking with colleagues is that typically the retailer mentality is applied online.
Yeah, that's a very big difference. Yeah,
it's very different. So what this means is really using data and insight to understand customer experience and find ways to enhance it.
Yeah.
And that I think has been one of the big tools for the success of Ace and Tate. And what we've been able to do with that is just be able to grow that and expand connection points with the brand by expanding through offline growth.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. So, you obviously know, particularly as a person hailing from the US, Warby Parker, which started this revolution in online. Online first eyewear and much more as a fashion brand. So how much did Ace and Tate copy from Warby Parker and just implemented it locally here in the Netherlands very well?
Well, I think Warby Parker happened around, they started, 2010, 2011?
Yeah.
And incidentally, it was more or less a similar time when Mark actually started the business model. And I think he kind of came to this similar, if you were to talk to Mark, he would tell you that he had a bit of a similar situation as the founders, where he was shopping, I think it was even in the US, in New York at the time, at an eyewear brand, and kind of walked in, wanted a pair of glasses, and walked out with $400 out of his pocket, not really sure what just happened.
Yeah.
And that inspiration is really where the brand started from. I think we've grown over the same period together, and I think overall Warby does a fantastic job of really creating a great customer experience in the U.S. But we've kind of moved in our own way, I think the experience itself, let's say the aesthetic and the energies of the brands are quite different. And I think also we've just had different challenges as organizations. One of our biggest challenges is the fact that we operate across multiple markets with multiple regulations, with how you deal with this medical product, multiple languages, multiple ways of having to hire and keep staff. And so for us, it's been really almost a game of growth and localization at the same time.
Yeah, it's challenging.
And I think there's a lot of credit that can also be given, especially to the retail department here at Ace Tate for being able to overcome that, because that as a startup is quite a challenge.
Yeah. What are your key markets that you operate outside of the Netherlands?
So Germany is a big one for us, as I think it is for a lot of players here in Europe. The UK has also been traditionally a great market for us, as well as Belgium as well. Those are some of our larger markets. We've seen a lot of great growth recently in the Nordics as well. And when was, I think, end of 2019, we also moved into Spain. So we entered into our first Mediterranean country. And there we've got 2 stores right now.
Leuk dat je op ons YouTube-kanaal bent. Wil je meer zien en horen vooral van alle top marketing CMO's in Nederland? Abonneer je dan eventjes hieronder, dan mis je nooit een aflevering.